Well, good morning. It's going to be a rather interesting talk this morning because at the request of someone, the Tuesday morning group last week, they asked if I would share my story. And so for those of you who are in the other groups, this is my story. And my prayer is that you would see God's hand of grace and mercy in my life all the way through. But when I go to speak, whether it's in this particular venue or any other venue, you know the rest of the story behind who I am. And so, yeah. So I'm going to tell you my story. So I was born in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, to a couple that met in World War II. My dad was a pilot. My mom was a communications officer. And they met and married in 44 and had my sister in 44, my brother in 46. And I came along 9 years later in 55. And yeah, I likely was an afterthought. And you can mock all you want about that. But interesting, I wasn't born into a Christian home. My mom and dad weren't Christians when they got married. But as my older brothers I started to get to the ages 2 and 4, my mom said, I really want to have some help in raising these kids. I want good values in them. So my mom started to take kids to a little neighborhood church that was near them. And it was there at age 28 that my mom gave her life to Jesus. And she was the first in our family to become a Christian. My dad didn't become a Christian for another almost 10 years, 9 years after that. And I do remember a season in my life where my dad hadn't given his life to the Lord yet. But as a young kid of 11, I had accepted Jesus into my life. And at 11, my dad and I were baptized the same day as he gave his life to Jesus fully and gave up, smoking and some of his other vices. And yeah, it was a pretty fun day, baptized with my dad. My mom and dad were really committed to Jesus, seriously. And I'm sure that only Jesus knows how much of my life is what it is because of their faith. And my mom was gung-ho for Jesus. My dad just continued to quietly grow in his faith and became an elder and a board member of Christian organizations and things over time, taught Sunday school. But my mom was all in right from the start. And so I accepted the Lord as a little guy. After my mom had given her life to Christ, she started a Good News Bible Club, which is after school, kids would come over to our house and she would teach them about Jesus. And interesting, over 35 years of having Good News Club, she averaged between 17 and 18 kids every Tuesday afternoon at 3:30. And so it was there that I actually prayed to receive Jesus. In my high school years, 13 to 18 was pretty significant years. Why? Because it was there that God in his grace brought so many amazing things to bear in my life, where normally is the season where you kind of go off the rails and go stupid and, make your poor choices and different things. It was at that time that God brought me in touch with some really, really good leaders in my world. I got involved with Youth for Christ. At the time was a large rally ministry where kids all come together like bands and speakers and stuff. And because my dad was on the board of Youth for Christ in Saskatoon, many times the speakers would stay at our home. So the guy who spoke to 400 or 500 kids that night would stay at my home, and I got to chat with this guy away from the platform. And I think that's where my love for communicating God's word came, because these guys we'd be being at my house, and I was so blessed by having these great guys in my life. I also started singing in Christian contemporary bands at the time, and literally traveling on weekends. And there was a few times where the speaker, the Youth for Christ director, couldn't come. So he would tell me in grade 11 or 12, okay, Dave, you got to speak at the end because I won't be there. You invite kids to come to Jesus. And you see, whether it was the Youth for Christ director or these speakers, I did have a significant young pastor in this little small church that I grew up in that was really a sharp, cool guy. I really liked the fact that he was really fun and crazy, and he played hockey and he sang really well, which were some of my passions. And so high school was a very significant time because really good people in my world. In the fall of my grade 11 year is in Saskatoon. If you know any of the history of the revival movement in September, October of 1971, revival came to Saskatoon. And here I was, a high school kid in grade 11. And I went to church 6 or 7 weeks in a row, almost every night, to this movement of God that was there. And I just remember so powerfully God just speaking to me. And one night I went forward, though I was I was the president of my youth group. I was on leadership in the Interschool Christian Fellowship. I sang in this Youth for Christ singing group. It was very public in that. But God just spoke to me and he said, Dave, he says, I don't want the things you do for me. I want your life. I want your life. Will you give me your life? I remember that as specifically and as clearly as I'm sitting here sharing this with you today, that I went forward that night. And but it was very interesting because I prayed about some things that were important to me as I kind of recommitted. But it was about a week later that the Lord really got a hold of my life and was really challenging me to really make a different level of commitment than I mentally had, because there was some reservations there. And I was actually dating already my now wife, Donna Lynn, and the young college guy that was staying at their house, he was there. And we walked back on a Sunday night back to the car to drive home after the meeting. And I was so under conviction to really surrender everything to the Lord that I said to my girlfriend and the college guy that was with us, I said, I'm sorry, but I just have to pray right now. And I put my head against the steering wheel and I just started to sob. And I say, I'm sorry, Jesus, I will give you everything. I will give you everything, no holds barred. And so in front of my girlfriend and the boarder from her house, that leaning against my forehead, against the steering wheel of the car and just weeping and giving Jesus everything, really did change this guy's life. Because already by grade 12, I felt called into ministry full time, that I was going to serve the Lord. And interesting, at a time when most people are running away from the Lord, God just brought things into my life that just kept me on track. I mean, I was a high school football player, high school wrestler, high school track. I went to provincials in pole vaulting. I was one of the top receivers in football, and I would have had a scholarship at University of Saskatchewan, but I decided to go into ministry at Briarcrest Bible College. And meantime, I started dating my wife in grade 10. And who would have thought that starting dating then that you'd end up 3.5 years later marrying this little gal. I went to Briarcrest Bible College and I pursued a degree in ministry, Bachelor of Religious Education, focusing on youth and music. My undergrad is in music as well, with voice. I did a lot of singing and traveling. And it was through those opportunities in singing and traveling that I shared a lot of my faith. I spoke publicly a lot in those early years. So God was really gracious to me. In the summers already, summer grade 9, summer grade 10, summer grade 11, I worked at Christian camps in the summer, Ranger Lake Bible Camp, Redberry Bible Camp, Circle C Ranch down in New York. And I was a riding instructor and then a counselor with the boys, and just a privilege to share Christ with teenagers, even while I was a teenager, was a real thrill. So the fact that God brought significant people in my life and in events in my life during high school, when you usually kind of go the stupid direction, I can't take any credit for that. I just know that God got a hold of me in my teen years. And matter of fact, in grade 12, between my wife and I, we saw 31 of our friends pray to receive Jesus in grade 12. And so you can tell that my heart for Jesus just continued to beat stronger and stronger. I went from there to Briarcrest Bible College to get my degree, and while there, I played hockey, and I also started working as the first intern with this big youth outreach they called Youthquake. And so I was the first intern to work with these teachers to run this big event, which eventually got to 4,000 kids a weekend. But I'll come back to that. So it was during my college days that the Lord continued to give me a love for his word and to grow in his word. And it was during college years that I married Donna Lynn, and just very blessed by who she is, and the beautiful person that God has allowed me to marry. After college, we served in Calgary for 3 years as a youth pastor. And the fun thing about that particular experience, it was a smaller church of about 150 people. And during those 3 years, it grew to about 300. But my youth group grew from 6 to 8 kids to about 90. And on Sunday mornings, there was often more kids in the church than adults. It was a really fun season. And if I would have stayed one more year in that area, the local high school was going to give me an office in the high school because there were so many kids I was influencing there. It was really fun, just a great season in Calgary. But I did feel called to go back to school. And I went my first time to Trinity in 79 to 81. And I got 2 master's degrees while I was down there, a master's in Christian education, focusing on youth development. But I really went down for a master's in counseling psychology, because I just felt I was helping all these kids. But what if I was directing them in a direction that wasn't good? So I just wanted to make sure I knew how to help kids and was heading them in a good direction. And so I did those 2 master's degrees. And while I was down there, I worked as a youth pastor in Mundelein, Calvary Baptist Church in Mundelein, Illinois. And that was a wonderful time, just practicing the things that I was learning in graduate school. Rather interesting, 5 years after I graduated college, the school reached out to me and asked if I would come back and be a teacher. I'm only 25, 26, and I started being a college professor at 26. And of course, my students are 20, 21, 22. And so it's interesting how God leads. But I taught for 10 years at Briarcrest Bible College. And it was during that time that we had 2 children. And we also built our own house there in 84. And I taught courses on psychology, counseling. I actually taught courses on how to speak, how to preach. I taught the basic psychology courses, and I taught evangelism courses. And just was really a privilege to teach students. I would have 250 to 300 students every semester that I was overseeing and teaching. So that was a wonderful season. It was also there that I led that same youth program called Youthquake for 10 years. And during that time, it grew to over 4,000 kids on the weekend. I also started an outreach ministry called Troop, which was a comedy youth outreach team. Some of you know Monty Python. It was basically a Christian version of slapstick comedy and rock and music. And in the month of May, we'd travel across Canada or northern US, and we would do high school assemblies and evening citywide events. And we would minister to 25,000 kids in the month of May every year, as we just went all over for 3.5 weeks. So beautiful experience. Also, of course, continued to enjoy hockey. So I coached the college hockey team during the time I was there. So after the 10 years at Cairnport, we felt called to do something new, and didn't leave Cairnport on difficult terms. I've been back to speak at their grad and things, so still in good relationship with the school. But I came to Northview Community Church out here in Abbotsford, BC, originally came as their family pastor, and there was no one running the college program, so I agreed to take the college program on as well. But the college program blew up. It went from about 25 kids to close to 600 kids that were meeting every Wednesday evening, and so after 2 years of trying to oversee the family ministry, which I did a lot of premarital counseling. That's where I did most of my premarital counseling. We would do, I would do 40 to 50 couples a year in premarital counseling because it was such a large church, and I would do 20 to 25 weddings in the summer. So it was a busy season in a large church, and a great season. So we're grateful for the opportunity I had. We did many missions trips. We did big outreaches there at Christmas with 12 to 16,000 people coming to our church to hear about Jesus at Christmas, and a wonderful season. We still attend Northview. Again, we didn't leave Northview on any difficult terms. And so my wife and I still attend Northview Community Church in Abbotsford. But mission trips, the college program would send out 2 mission trips every summer. I would lead one. And so my wife and I have had the privilege of being in 41 different countries of the world and ministering in 27 different countries of the world, where we share the difference Jesus makes in a life, in a marriage, in a home, on these trips. Matter of fact, even as we speak, I've just confirmed recently South Korea in January, Mexico in February, and Turkey in March. And so we're going to continue to travel, and as God gives us strength, just share the difference God makes and train counselors. Or I'm going to be speaking at high schools and junior highs in both those countries. God's blessed me, and I just want to keep serving as God keeps opening the door. After 10 years at Northview, from 2001 to 2009, I became the National Director of Family Life, which is part of Campus Crusade for Christ. And I also oversaw Athletes in Action for 3 years, which is the sports ministry. So I was overseeing 66 staff in one department. That was Athletes in Action. And Family Life was a little department of 1.5 staff. And I became the national director of 1.5 staff. Yeah, big title. And but during that season, it grew to 33 staff, and that's when I started the TV show. And for 6 seasons, we had a TV show that went across Canada and the U.S. called Marriage Uncensored. And that was during a season where the Weekend to Remember, you may have heard that, Family Life's Weekend to Remember conferences. I started speaking to that while I was at Northview. My wife and I were speakers with them for 17 years, and I directed that program, and I trained speakers to come on to our team. After those 8 years with Family Life, we started doing Family Right in 2010. And that brings us to the present. Doing Family Right was by and large a traveling speaking ministry, where we would do conferences, parenting conferences, marriages conferences, and my wife and I would travel and speak together. And as time went on, and we moved into the building that I'm sitting in this morning, we got this building at a beautiful generosity rate by an amazing pair of father-son businessmen who graced us with this building for such a fair price. And it's here that I said, once if we get this space, which is way more than we needed, I think I'm going to open up a counseling center. And I'd never done that before, but I, of course, have a master's in counseling, and I'm not afraid to try new things. And so it was in 2016 that we started here at this office and opening a counseling center. And as of this fall, between counselors that are here or going to be in Chilliwack in the new office there, or working remotely from different locations, there's 3 remote counselors. There's actually 25 now counselors that are on our team, and just trusting God to do great things through doing Family Right. Now that's kind of the story. Along the way, 2 of our kids were born when we were in Calgary, and 2 of our kids were born while we were in Cairnport in Saskatchewan. And we have 4 married kids, and they have chosen well to follow Jesus, and wonderful life partners. And we have 13 grandkids that are, this will be the only year that they're all going to be in K to 12. They'll all be in school. The oldest ones are in grade 12, and the youngest now are in kindergarten. and we were just all together yesterday, and my family makes me a millionaire. They're just amazing. So you kind of heard the story, the journey, the historical side. I want to share with you some of the significant things, the lessons I learned along the way that are likely more important. It was during high school that I really started to read my Bible every day. The Youth for Christ director was a great influence on my life, and he led a Saturday morning Bible study called TWASH, which was Teens with a Spiritual Hunger. And I went to that faithfully every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, and really grew to love God's word. And matter of fact, because I'm a sports junkie and would watch lots of sports, at the time, Canadian football, and the Lord convicted me. Why would I sit and watch 2.5 hours of football and read my Bible for 5-10 minutes every day and think that that's growing in the Lord? And so it was back in high school that I made agreement that if I watched the football game, I'd have to read my Bible 2.5 hours as well. And though I've got 10.5 years of schooling after high school, because in 88 and 89, I went and got my doctorate, graduated finally in 95 with my doctorate in education, focusing on marriage and family. But no, it was, I started really falling in love with the Bible and just reading it. And it was in high school, as you heard, I really started to publicly share my faith with people and be very public. I wear these around. I don't care what people think. I'm just going to tell you what I think. And I started in high school sharing my faith pretty openly, and really had a love for God's word, and really a desire to see people understand the difference that Jesus makes in a person's life. So it was some of the key lines, key principles that God told me along the way. I've jotted them down, and I'm going to share with you some of these significant ones. When I was at Briarcrest teaching at the college, and I ran that youth outreach team for 6 years called Troop, the line that we used, the motto was, trusting Jesus is the best way to go. And so all those kids we would speak to and challenge and invite to Jesus, the push behind our ministry was trusting Jesus is the best way to go with your life. Trusting Jesus is the best way to go. Then from there, when I was pastoring at Northview, I helped shaping the vision of the church, and the motto or the slogan of the church was leading people to passionately follow Jesus. That was the mission statement, leading people to passionately follow Jesus. And that is, of course, you can kind of hear that as I speak from week to week, that I really believe in passionately following Jesus. And it was in 1991, which you can see right on the shirt here. It was 1991 that David Malcolm Currie, DMC, put these words together for my own kids. Put God first, life goes best. I wanted to make sure that my kids had the clear picture of what's important in life. And it was in 91 that I put this together to start communicating to my own kids that were grade 8, grade 7, grade 2 in kindergarten. And so this became part of my fabric of my life, that if you put God first, life goes best. It doesn't go perfect, but it always goes better with Jesus in first place. When I was with Family Life after Northview, the motto of the ministry became inspiring family transformation. And it was the difference that God makes in a life, in a marriage, in a home, inspiring life transformation. And during that time, the TV show that I ran for 6 years, 190 shows, we had a weekly viewing audience of 750,000 people. The line I said at the end of every one of those TV shows, remember, this was to a secular audience. So I said this: you'll never regret putting your marriage and family first. You take care, and God bless. I said that at every one of the TV shows to an audience that wasn't Christian. And we called it pre-evangelism. We called it giving them God's truth. And it would beg the question, why are you doing this? This makes a lot of sense. And then we would share with them the Jesus difference. But, and then of course, now with DFR, the mission statement for DFR is maximizing your most important relationships: marriage, family, and God. So I really live for one reason: to help people understand the difference Jesus makes in life, and to help you work it in to your primary relationships with your marriage, with your family, and your relationship with God. My life verse is in Philippians chapter 1, verse 20, and it reads like this: "For I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage, so that now, as always, Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or death." Philippians 1:20. And most of you know 21, which says, "For me to live is Christ, to die is gain." Interesting season. My wife's parents are 91, and they're likely towards the last few months of their life in full care homes, or now my father's in the hospital, father-in-law. And I love Dr. John Kaiser, who in one way or another was a mentor of mine, though not in an official role, but as my father-in-law. And barring significant changes, they'll be seeing Jesus, likely both of them, in the next 2 to 3 months. They're not doing too well. I bring that up because in the discussion about looking at the generation above you's final days, pretty soon I'll be the top generation. I am in my family, but my wife's family have, her parents are still both alive, but pretty soon it'll be Dave and Donna Lynn will be the leaders of the family. And I said this to my sons recently. Actually, a couple of my kids, to be honest, just my boys, one of the girls was there too. I said, you know what? I think I'm going to speak at my own funeral. And my daughter-in-law piped up and said, well, do it. Do your talk before you get too old. Like, don't do it from a bed. Don't do that. It'd be bad. And so I'm pretty sure, like, in the next 2 or 3 years, I'm going to do the talk from my funeral, because I don't want to have somebody not tell the story about my life and the importance that Jesus makes. So at my funeral, when people are saying goodbye to Currie, they're going to hear a lot about Jesus, because I'm pretty sure, well, I'm committed to do my own talk at my own memorial. And it'd be kind of fun, eh? Because if you listen to this, you know that I'm in the box at the front or whatever. And so yeah, that's going to happen. So yeah, maximizing your most important relationship, marriage, family, God, is DFR. And likely the number one verse I give to people in exchange of encouragement that I will have put in text and emails, the number one verse, though my life verse is Philippians 1:20. The verse I give to more people than any other verse is Proverbs 3:5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. From the Living Bible, it says this. It says, if you want favor with God and man, and a reputation for good judgment and common sense, then trust the Lord completely. Don't ever trust yourself. In everything you do, put God first, and he will direct you and crown your efforts with success. That's the verse that put God first, life goes best, is anchored to. So this morning, I'm honored to tell you that Jesus makes the non-negotiable difference in my life. I do not regret following Jesus early in my life. I do not have a tragic story of being on Skid Row or drugs and alcohol. I do not have that story. Matter of fact, I finally wrote a song. I've written over 85 songs. I finally wrote a song about my story because, I don't have this wild transformation. I don't have that. I don't have a time when I really ran from Jesus, because at the time when most people run from Jesus, Jesus graciously put cool people in my life who loved Jesus, who were just so attractive to me that I just wanted to follow Jesus in the times that most people go like that to the Lord. And so I'm so grateful for the goodness of God in my life and for the non-negotiable difference he makes. So I've said, and I will continue, I don't see the word retirement in Scripture. Now, I am flexible with my schedule, but humanly, I'm way past retirement. 3 years, as far as humans, is 65, but that's an artificial number. I love Jesus, and as people keep saying, Currie, would you speak, or can I talk to you? I will say yes, because I would love to help you grow in your faith. I would love to help you understand knowing Jesus is the best thing you'll ever do. And love Jesus I love Jesus. And if I could help you in your walk with Jesus and deal with the struggles in your life, I'm all in. I'm all in. Because his way is best. His way is best. My life is proof of it. It's not a perfect life. I've struggled. I've had hurdles. I've been fired. I've had all kinds of things, but those things fall into the shadows so quickly when you know Jesus and you're able to trust him with your life. So thank you. I don't remember in 20 years someone saying, sometime, Currie, we'd like to hear your story. I haven't shared that for a long time. So thank you for the privilege of letting me share that. I hope you find encouragement for you. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to leave the video playing and I'm going to answer questions, but you need to ask the questions in the chat. If you'd like to ask a question, just pop it in the chat and I will answer them right now. So yeah, anything you can ask about my shoe size. I don't care. Just anything, wide open game. So just pop it in the chat. All right. And if there's none, we can end this earlier. So no big deal. But you have a right to ask questions of who the guy that's speaking all the time that you got to listen to. Well, you don't have to listen to. You are listening to, I guess. Any questions?